press conference, and they were talking about things such as the Integrity Committee. David Makura of Gauteng addressing that. Let's speak to Lesiba Tefozo, political analyst, just talk about the press conference yesterday. What did you make of that press conference?
Look, I'm impressed by the desire to revisit documents that were adopted a few years ago. You know, the challenges the party faces right now would have been minimized or at least non-existent had they abided by the document entitled Through the Eye of the Needle. The Integrity Committee, all right, the attempt to deal with cadre deployment based on merit. There is nothing wrong with cadre deployment. Safe to say, whoever is deployed should be based on merit. And I'm glad now they're speaking that language, informed by the challenges that they have faced. Integrity Committee, you know, there is no need for the president to step in and to fire. People should fall by their own source if they have failed the organization. And if you do so, then you minimize the tension and the friction that exists within the party, because you are saying, for all that I've done and failed you and brought disruption to the party, I fall on my sword, and then I'm laying a foundation and example for those who would follow later. So
the Integrity Committee, you see it as a giant leap, giant step forward for the ANC. Will it be able decisively to address this issue that hangs as a cloud over the party about corruption?
What is not lacking are the documents. What is lacking is commitment to implementation. Because even in the absence of the Integrity Committee, in the nature of politics, people should be able to take responsibility for their own action. But, Vuyo, it is important to invoke what the Secretary General said. Because of the factions, even if we fail, right, we tend to take sides and decide on meeting disciplinary action on the basis of which Section 1 belongs to. It's not me, it's the Secretary General saying. That instead of acting against people, we first look at where they belong and which slate they belong to. And then speak about that.
So other slates, because there seems to be a variety of messages. Now that you've raised that issue, what will do? You're speaking about what the Secretary General is saying. I'm going to ask you to watch the monitor. And then let's take a look at this particular clip that talks. It's the Secretary General of the ANC, Gweta Mantashe, addressing himself to this question about slates. Let's take a look.
The fight against slate politics must be won, comrade, because slates weaken the movement. I can share with you the experience that we had when we talk about this as officials. They say, you were a product of a slate in Pulugwana. Now, because you are a beneficiary, it must pay. No. That is not the issue. The issue is slate politics, whether they benefit me or they benefit another person, weaken the movement. Because good cadres of the movement who happen to be in a slate that I see as wrong get eliminated in the leadership. And that leadership become weaker. Now, I won't use the term that I normally use when I talk of leadership elected of slates, because you see now when we elect according to slates, we all ride on the wave of the leadership of that slate. When work must be done beyond conference, you find a number of fellow travelers. Because it happens at all levels of the movement, comrade. You go to provinces, you find this reality. You go to regions, you find this reality. You go to branches, you find this reality.
All right, so that's what the Secretary General was saying. So are there slates in the ANC or are there no slates?
It's interesting that we are all in plenary and we all have the documents. And in the documents, he clearly states that there are slates. Yeah. That's one. The deputy president of the country, Kgalema Motlanthe, at least also discounted the notion of the use of the slates. And for those who say there are no slates, but again, let me quote the Secretary General. He said, we must do away with the slates. However, when we talk to comrades about that, they say, surely it can't be the SG because you are a beneficiary of the slate system. Okay. So what does it tell us? they need to engage each other and convince each other that is not the route to go.
Are the slates a bad thing, though? I mean, they give you certainty about who's running, so you are clear who you are likely to be voting for. I mean, are they a bad thing?
They certainly are a very, very bad thing. They must discard that immediately, because it says men and women of integrity. For the simple reason that they belong to the wrong slate, then that talent may be led to waste.
You know what I want to do? I just want to bring back Susan Booysen. Susan, please walk across that way so that we can just check on this, your view on the slates. You know, I mean, the Secretary General in that clip says that the slates rob the ANC of good quality leadership. Do you agree with that?
Indeed, I completely agree that very often it does. It's a mechanism of organization, and delegates themselves refer to it as bulk buying. And you get the good and the bad in one package. And that really makes quite a mockery of internal democracy in the ANC if you, by means of exclusion, on the basis of previous fallouts and mobilizations in, for example, provinces, completely rule out some very credible person who would actually make good leaders. And it does tend to place political loyalty before governance, performance, overview, oversight of people in government. It determines loyalty for a whole term in ANC governance. And I think the ANC itself really cannot afford it. But then I find it difficult to see how are they going to move away from it.
Is it embedded now?
It is so embedded.
Is that a culture now?
A circle.
It has become a second nature. But what I like is that there seem people are vocal against it, and they've raised it. All they need, as I said previously, they need programs that would ensure that that message goes down even to the most remote municipality or branch.
How is the slate assembled? How does it actually work?
It really begins with which people have been loyal to me, who is my in-group. And very often, very unlikely people rise right to the top, and once they're in there, it becomes so entrenched, and then they start enforcing it from the province to the regions to the branches.
So should one assume that with this particular case, President Zuma sat down and wrote people's names, Kgalema sat down and Deputy President Motlanthe wrote down names? How did it actually work?
It is slightly more bottom-up. In the provinces and the regions, there are close cooperation between these two structures, and they very often go and look at who would benefit us, who have been loyal to us.
So it's a bottom-up thing?
To the table, sorry.
Is it a bottom-up thing?
I think it is a bottom-up thing. But the worst thing about this, it says you will be obliged to reward those who ensured you that you get appointed. And you are effectively also saying enmity and divisions should be entrenched to the extent that the vanquished should go back to the trenches to ensure that they mobilize, that in the future their slaves wins. The sad thing about the whole exercise is that the elections have been concluded and others are already regrouping in preparation for the next elective conference. Surely something must be done about it.
The way in which slates are made to articulate with charges of ill discipline, that is quite disconcerting, because if you're on the wrong slate, if you campaigned against the dominant slate, as we saw around this conference as well, then the charges of ill discipline is slapped against you. And then that's when people start turning to courts because they cannot find the internal voice in the ANC. They haven't got assurances to be heard in internal debates and leadership debates too in the organization once you're on the wrong side of the dominant slate.
So you can expect some casualties from this particular conference?
I do indeed. And from conversations with many of the delegates around the campus yesterday, they indeed expect it too. They rationalize, do they buy a car or do they buy a house? Because they probably aren't going to be, for example, in a legislature much longer.
Thank you very much, Siba, as well as Susan talking to us, insights about slates. What are your thoughts? Slates, are they a good way or a bad way? Tweet at Mbuli Vuyo.